A methane leak has been reported in Porter Ranch, California, which is in the San Fernando Valley area of Los Angeles. Now, this methane leak actually started last October, but it hasn't made many headlines, even though the ramifications of this leak are disastrous. Now, a nearby Southern California gas company natural gas well began leaking at a rate of 110,000 pounds an hour.
Now, if you think that sounds like a lot, you're right. That's a lot.
Yes. Now we have infrared footage showing what the leak looks like. Rachel Maddow actually did a great report on this, so I want to show you a snippet of her coverage, which includes that footage. Let's take a quick look at that.
Last week, we showed you this infrared time-lapse image of the natural gas leak in Porter Ranch, California. With this, we can see what people there have been smelling and getting sick from for nearly 2 months now. This huge, out-of-control natural gas leak that they just cannot get under control. Big rolling clouds of methane gas. This thing has been leaking for weeks now, and the gas company says they're still nowhere near figuring out how to stop the leak. They're still estimating that this leak could keep going on for 4 more months before they figure out how to stop it. And the scale of this thing near Porter Ranch, California, in Southern California, the scale of this thing is nuts. State air quality regulators estimate the leak is releasing so much methane per hour that this one leak basically accounts for 25% of all the daily greenhouse gas emissions in the entire state of California.
So that goes towards my point, which is, look, sometimes you hear these things, well, 110,000 pounds an hour of natural gas. And you'll hear like, oh, but actually within context, it's not that bad. No, in this case, it's really, really bad.
It's extremely bad. People have been evacuated from their homes. Property values in Porter Ranch, which, by the way, property values in Porter Ranch used to be extremely high, are decreasing rapidly. I mean, people are questioning their livelihood because of this, because people were planning on retiring on the equity of their homes, and now their homes have lost so much value. But forget about that. People's lives are in danger, which is why they're leaving the area, and they're spending as much as $8,500 a month to rent places. Landlords are taking advantage of the situation, which is even more sick. Now, SoCal Gas expects to have the leak fixed in 3 to 4 months.
Well, thanks for getting to it.
Until then, the company is paying to relocate and house residents and pets sickened by fumes that health officials and independent experts say can cause headaches, nosebleeds, nausea, and other short-term ailments, but supposedly pose no long-term health risks. I don't know if I buy into that. The Southland Regional Association of Realtors has amended residential purchase disclosure agreements for the San Fernando Valley to advise that there is no definitive time frame for controlling the gas leak.
So now, first off, you have the damage to the environment that Rachel was talking about, because methane is a huge part of what causes which is worse than carbon emissions, which leads to climate change.
Right.
Significantly worse, 25 times worse than carbon emissions. So to leak 110,000 pounds of this per hour is devastating, devastating. Then you've got the personal health problems that Anna just mentioned. Then you've got the property issues that that we have here. Plus, people are bleeding and have headaches, and their kids are sick. They're checking them into hospitals. Then there are people who are already sick and bedridden in that area. Now they got to get removed from that area entirely and moved into other places. Who's going to bear that cost? So every once in a while, when we have the BP oil disaster, you have disasters like this, people go, golly gee, what could we do? No, well, wait a minute. We could have had more regulation to make sure that we weren't relying on 50-year-old pipes. Right? That's something we could have done.
Or regulation to ensure that if a leak like this occurs, there's a quick fix to ensure that you take care of the problem immediately. There needs to be safeguards. But it seems as though because of a lack of regulation, there weren't safeguards put in place to A, prevent the leak, or solve the leak as soon as it happens. The fact that this has been happening since October is ridiculous, and the fact that they don't plan on fixing it or solving this problem until February is even more ludicrous. But if you want to know what the political issues are here, I'll tell you what they are in just a second.
Before you do that, one last thing about how disastrous this is. So the company on November 12th released its own report saying that the hazardous sulfur compounds were intermittent and very low, and below the state standard. So nothing to worry about here. Everybody look away. Well, then they did actual tests. The tests had found that hydrogen sulfide levels of 183 parts per billion, 6 times the state standard for a chemical that can be poisonous. 6 times the rate at which it could be poisonous.
Yeah, but don't worry, Cenk. It's not going to cause any long-term ailments. Just short-term. Just short-term nosebleeds, vomiting, nausea, headaches, it's no long-term issues. Look, I'm not an expert. I'm not a health expert. But typically when a company involved in a terrible environmental and health issue like this will tend to lie. They lie. They're not going to tell you the truth about what the ramifications are going to be, especially to your health. We've seen this time and time again. I don't want to worry anyone, but anyone living in the area should definitely evacuate. They should definitely leave, and a lot of families have done that so far.
When they were busted on their own report, Anna, wait a minute, this is much worse than you said. They said, oh, the part about the sulfide, yeah, that was just a small omission.
Get out of here.
Oh, did we leave out the part about the poisonous air? Slight omission. Sorry about that, right? Yeah, look, this is all part of what we talk about all the time on the show. They privatize the gains. They take all the money while things are going well, right? And then they socialize the losses. Oh, did your family have to move out? Yes, they're paying for some people's rent as they're moving out. Yeah, of course. At a minimum, they got to do that. Oh, you folks are sick. I don't know. Oh, the stuff that's in the air now that's going to lead to climate change? Hey, all across the world, Germany, South Africa, Japan, congratulations, your climate just got much worse. Am I going to pay for that? Of course not. I privatized the gains and I socialized the losses. Good luck with those losses. And how do they get away with it? As usual, dirty politics.
So there are very clear ties to Governor Jerry Brown's family members and the company that owns this pipeline that has now leaked, okay? Governor Brown has a number of connections to Sempra, which is the name of the company. His sister, Kathleen Brown, sits on Sempra's board of directors. She joined the company in 2013, reportedly receiving hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash and equity. She also holds $400,000 in stock and last year received a $188,380 salary, and that's according to the Associated Press. Now, Governor Brown himself also has ties to this company in the form of campaign donations. Governor Brown's connections to Sempra goes even deeper. Campaign finance records show that Brown has received tens of thousands of dollars in campaign contributions from Sempra and Sempra employees going back to at least 2006. So, of course, that's going to have an influence on, whether the government goes after this company for this leak.
So I haven't seen every press release that Jerry Brown's put on this. I do know that living in Los Angeles, the area that's affected, I have not seen nonstop coverage of this since the leak happened months ago. I haven't seen Jerry Brown all over television going, this is a travesty, we've got to fix it. Now, he's a Democrat. He's supposed to be pro-regulations.
Yep.
Yet, there doesn't seem to be a ton of news coming out of the governor's office about the outrages here. Now that there's a little bit of a hand in the cookie jar situation, things might change, and we hope they do change. But see, this is what we tell you. It isn't about Democrats. It isn't about Republicans. If you have a system where the people that are in power and the politicians get money from private interests to run their campaigns, who are they going to work for? They're going to work for those private interests. And then that trick, I told you about it just last week, where they hire family members. Talked about it in relationship to Dan Lugar, who's the son of Richard Lugar, former senator from Indiana, that worked out with Harry Reid, a Democrat, to get tax breaks in for casinos and hotels and restaurants, right? So you think that what a wonderful coincidence. It turns out the person who is perfect on expertise for our board is the governor's sister. That's not a coincidence.
It's not.
They do it as an informal, unofficial bribe, so that if something like this happens,
it's funny that they have the informal, unofficial bribes, and then they have the official, very transparent bribes in the form of campaign donations. Look, what makes it even more egregious, Cenk, is that Governor Jerry Brown is known for being very vocal about climate change. Okay, he was one of the U.S. representatives who, not in terms of like Congress representatives, but U.S. politicians that went to Paris during these negotiations. He's been vocal about how we need to do something about climate change. If he's definitely passionate about that issue, then he should come down very hard on Sempra and what's happening in Porter Ranch right now. He should be very vocal about it, and I haven't heard much from Governor Jerry Brown, to be honest with you.
And now that the LA Times is writing about it, we're talking about it, Rachel Maddow's talking about it, my guess is that Jerry Brown will come out very belatedly months later and tell us how outraged he is. But funny how they never get outraged until they get caught.